The wheelchair slammed backward as the front door burst open by itself. Muddy water spread across the floor while someone unseen dragged wet footprints toward the bedroom. A shattered photograph floated across the hallway before stopping at her feet. The face inside the frame had been scratched away with something sharp. Outside, a pale light flickered near the lake again. The woman tried calling for help, but every phone line inside the house hissed with static. 3 months earlier, the crash had folded their car into a drainage barrier during a storm. Her fiancé died before emergency crews reached the ravine. Doctors rebuilt parts of her skull and spine with metal plates. When she finally woke, she learned the pregnancy had not survived. With nowhere else to recover, she accepted an invitation from the father she barely remembered. He arrived smiling too quickly and avoided looking at her scars. He refused to let her stay upstairs. Instead, he forced open a sealed room hidden behind an old wardrobe and claimed it once belonged to her mother. That first night, breathing noises circled the bed long after the lights went out. Something heavy rolled slowly across the wooden floorboards. Morning brought silence again. While reaching beneath the bed for a fallen bracelet, she discovered a locked metal box wrapped in black fabric. Inside sat 4 damaged videotapes labeled with dates from decades earlier. Her name had been written across every case in faded ink. The first recording showed her mother speaking calmly into the camera while visibly pregnant. She claimed the messages were meant for a future birthday. Midway through the tape, the woman stopped smiling and stared toward something behind the camera. Then she whispered that another presence lived inside the house. The bedroom door slammed open before the tape finished. Her father ripped the cassette from the machine and demanded to know where she found it. He smashed the tape apart with a fireplace poker while shaking uncontrollably. Pieces of black film curled across the floor like burnt insects. Hours later, he dragged her wheelchair outside and hurled it into the lake. He claimed the room was poisoning her mind. That night she dreamed of a soaked woman standing beside the bed with lakeweed wrapped around her throat. The figure wore her face. At breakfast, her father apologized and blamed alcohol for the outburst. Yet he immediately asked whether she had found more tapes. After he left the property, the distant lake light returned. This time it blinked 3 times before disappearing beneath the surface. She retrieved another hidden tape from inside the mattress lining. The second recording began with her mother locking every window in the house. On screen, her mother warned that 2 women now existed under the same roof. One was alive, and the other had already drowned. The tape suddenly cut to black before revealing a second recording layered underneath. Someone else had been speaking over her mother's voice the entire time. A distorted whisper repeated the same sentence again and again. It claimed the lake kept the real body hidden below the mud. Before she could replay the message, the television exploded in sparks. Smoke filled the room while footsteps moved rapidly across the ceiling upstairs. The next morning, a rehabilitation therapist arrived from the hospital carrying mobility equipment. Her father watched the woman closely without speaking once. During therapy exercises, the woman regained enough strength to stand briefly beside the bathtub. Then the bathroom mirror cracked straight down the center. Her reflection stayed still after she stepped away. Seconds later, the reflected figure raised its hand independently and pointed toward the drain. Black lakewater suddenly flooded upward through the bathtub drain. Hair floated inside it before vanishing the instant her father entered the room. He blamed the therapist for leaving her unattended and forced the terrified woman off the property. Tire tracks disappeared quickly into the rainstorm outside. That evening, he searched every drawer and wall panel inside the bedroom. He finally uncovered the remaining tapes hidden beneath loose floorboards. He dragged the tapes toward the tool shed carrying gasoline and matches. She followed helplessly from the porch while the lake light flickered faster than before. Halfway inside the shed, the doors slammed shut on their own. Flames burst upward instantly as gasoline spread beneath his feet. He screamed her mother's name while clawing at the walls. Then the roof collapsed inward and silenced everything at once. Authorities ruled the fire accidental by sunrise. During the funeral service, she noticed a heavily burned man staring directly at her from across the cemetery. The sight triggered another violent blackout. She regained consciousness back at the estate with an old friend seated beside her wheelchair. He had recently returned from military deployment nearby and offered to stay until morning. His wife kept calling his phone every few minutes. She confessed everything about the recordings, the dreams, and the lake. He listened carefully but insisted trauma could create convincing hallucinations. To prove it, he watched fragments salvaged from one surviving tape. His confidence disappeared when a second woman briefly appeared behind her mother on screen. The hidden figure wore a soaked white dress and moved closer each time the tape rewound. By the third replay, the figure filled the entire screen. He ordered her never to watch the tapes alone again. Before leaving, he handed over a spare phone and promised to return the next day. Minutes after his truck disappeared down the road, the flickering light returned near the dock. This time it remained perfectly still above the water. Unable to resist, she played another surviving tape hidden inside the fireplace chimney. The footage showed a crowded holiday gathering inside the estate decades earlier. Her mother appeared healthy and smiling beside a decorated tree. Several guests suddenly stopped talking when the camera briefly captured a pregnant silhouette upstairs. The camera operator zoomed in accidentally before jerking away in panic. The upstairs woman had identical facial features to the daughter watching the tape. The final minutes showed her mother locking herself inside the downstairs bedroom while whispering that the child below the water was still hungry. A loud impact suddenly shook the real house upstairs. Dust drifted from the ceiling while heavy footsteps crossed directly over her room. She forced herself into the hallway and discovered wet footprints leading toward the attic staircase. Every footprint ended abruptly halfway up the steps. Inside the attic, she uncovered a bundle of hospital records hidden beneath insulation. One document listed 2 female infants delivered on the same NIG. Before she could read further, the attic door slammed shut behind her. Someone began dragging chains slowly across the floor outside. She escaped through a side ladder and collapsed outside near the shoreline. Across the lake, the burned man stood holding a lantern without moving. The next morning, her old friend returned unexpectedly after ignoring dozens of calls from his wife. He admitted someone had followed his truck through the woods overnight. Together they revisited the hospital records and discovered pages deliberately removed. Only one phrase remained visible beneath dried water stains. The phrase read, "Second child transferred before sunrise." Neither record explained where the infant had been taken afterward. While driving back toward the estate, they spotted fresh flowers hanging from trees near the swamp road. Every bundle pointed toward the lake. The burned man suddenly appeared in the middle of the road. Their truck swerved violently before crashing into a drainage ditch.